Hello, YouTube. Welcome to my channel, Marriage, Politics, and Sports. Today, I'm going to be talking about stuff that I only have really cocktail knowledge about. And that's something that the media and nobody really is covering the way they should. And that's what Trump is doing in Africa between Rwanda and the DRC. And the deal he's probably going to sign, or I think might have already made with the DRC for all of their rich minerals. I got a couple of videos that I was going to share with you guys. So before I get into that, like, share, and subscribe to my channel. And one of these things is that nobody really, I don't necessarily want to pass myself off as some kind of expert in this kind of stuff, but it's just a observation I made that, usually been in a previous administration and probably in the Obama administration, it seemed like the only thing that we wanted to do with Africa was import or export, homosexuality, right? We went over there and said, listen, if you don't let your people become homosexuals, we're not going to support anything you have to do. Whatever aid we were giving you was going to stop. It was like a threat of extortion unless the people went against their own will and start letting homosexuals rule the roost over there. So here we have Trump saying, you know what, let's make a deal that's more practical, that we get something out of it as Americans, minerals, and maybe we can help these people get some peace from these warring factions over those same said minerals, right? If they have if they can get that shit under control, maybe there's enough so the poverty in their country can be set aside and that money can flow better because they're not killing each other, especially between Rwanda and the rebels that come out, the rebels that they're fighting against, and the war they have with and DRC and Rwanda. We're talking about, over the years, some people say the death toll is somewhere around in the millions. Right. So when we look at Black people, when we say, well, we're all supposed to have some kind of kumbaya because of the color of our skin, there's no other, that's the most bullshit statement in the whole world in the face of what's going on in reality. So I'm going to go ahead and play a couple of these clips with Marco Rubio talking at the table with a representative of the DRC, a representative of a person from Rwanda, and they were talking about peace. And I think this is the table setting for Trump to go in and talk to the president of the DRC, who has the main control over, the largest mineral deposit for, whatever it is. I think it's cobalt or some other stuff. We're gonna go into that and do the video. We're not gonna play the whole videos. We'll stop and start it. But I think somebody should be talking about this, right? And if we don't go into Africa the way we should and try to build those countries up, China will go in. And, China, when they go in, it's going to be scorched earth, right? We know how they feel about Black people as well. But also their system of government doesn't make room for other people other than Chinese, right? We already know that. So, it's about time. I think we're stepping in later than we should because we're upside down. The liberals and the Democrats, all they care about is propelling homosexuality around the world as opposed to making solid deals in Africa so those people could thrive and we can get some mineral resources that we richly need for the stuff that we build here. All right, so without further ado, let's see what they have to say. I'm going to go ahead and play a little bit of Marco Rubio and the job that he's done getting these factions together to talk. You know what I'm saying? Here goes.
For being here today, I'm honored to be here with my counterparts, the foreign ministers of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, to witness the Declaration of Principles for Peace in the Eastern DRC. It's a declaration that establishes a fundamental understanding of regional governance, security, economic frameworks, and end the fighting and allow the region to reach its full potential. eastern part of the Democratic Republic has seen 30 years of conflict. Durable peace and long-lasting economic development is not going to be easy, but it is important. And having both of my counterparts here, of the foreign ministers of these respective countries, demonstrates the beginning of a strong commitment to having the conversations that we need to have in order to reach a resolution.
30 years of fighting. Can you imagine that? And we I don't know, we'll say conventional guerrilla warfare, attacks, machetes, kill, just death camps, all that kind of stuff. 30 years. Black on black killing for 30 years. Sitting on top of the most richest minerals in the entire world. And all the greed and the hate that people have for each other, where they can't come to some kind of resolution on how to get shit done. I mean, it's just crazy, man. And we can't just keep blaming this shit on past colonialism. It has something to do with it, but at some point, you would think that people, just the killing has to stop at some point. It just really does. Right. So now here you go with America stepping in again, trying to play peacemaker. Right. And we'll see if it works. So Marco Rubio, right? Everybody has their thing about him. So he's over in Africa doing I guess the Lord's work, right? Trying to bring peace to this region. And of course, we want something out of it. Of course, we want something out of it. That'll be in the next video when we talk about the minerals and stuff that they have over there.
I'm proud to work for a president who's made peace, stable global peace, a priority of this administration. And today is evidence of that. He wants to see a peaceful resolution in many parts of the world, but he wants to see a peaceful resolution here. And we want to play a constructive, productive, and important and key role in ensuring that that can happen. And a durable peace in the Great Lakes region will open the door for greater U.S. and broader Western investment, which will bring about economic opportunities and prosperity. And it will also help advance President Trump's prosperity agenda for the world. It's as they call it, a win-win for everyone involved, for the United States, for the Democratic Republic of Congo, and for Rwanda. Our firms are good corporate citizens, American firms, and they'll bring good governance and ensure responsible, reliable supply chains for things like critical minerals that benefit regional governments and our partners and allies as well. This economic development, combined with durable peace, and I would say durable peace comes before economic development. It's impossible to do without the peace. It will also allow millions of displaced people to return to their homes, to safer communities, with new economic opportunities that have escaped generations. The African Union and regional economic communities in Africa have done incredible work, and we need to recognize that in bringing parties together and laying the foundation for these talks. Our government here is focused on energizing these efforts. So we're going to be in close contact with our African Union partners to make sure we can bring this to fruition and to see that this better future reaches everyone. I do want to especially thank our senior advisor, Mr. Boulos, and his counterparts in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda for their vision and for their hard work. Today is a step to building a peaceful, prosperous Great Lakes region. And we look forward to working with everyone involved to achieve this goal. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Mr.
My
Secretary.
apologies. I should have turned to
No
you.
worries.
I apologize. I was looking.
No worries. Thank you. Mr. Secretary of State, Honorable Senator Marco Rubio, His Excellency Mr. Olivier Nduhungirehe, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Rwanda, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, today marks not an end but a beginning, a necessary step towards peace taken with resolve and purpose. This moment carries particular weight for the Democratic Republic of the Congo. In Goma, in Bukavu, and beyond, the reality of displacement, insecurity, and hardship continues. For us, the urgency of this initiative is not theoretical, it is human. We signed this declaration of principles not as a symbolic gesture, but as a political commitment, a reaffirmation of principles enshrined in international law, and most recently echoed in the UN Security Council Resolution 2773, a resolution calling for the immediate, unconditional, and verifiable withdrawal of all foreign troops from sovereign territory of the DRC. We are clear in the Great Lakes region, peace must come first, followed by the rebuilding of trust, and then, only when conditions are right, the careful reopening of a path to meaningful bilateral cooperation. Too many past efforts have failed because sequencing was ignored and accountability postponed.
You know, that's right. She's probably right because there's no other way to keep something going for 30 years. Because every time they tried to fix it, some group sabotaged it. You know, and whether it was some middleman or benefactor like somebody from Europe or China or maybe even the United States at some point. You know, it was just maybe half-assed trying to get things done. But you know, it's easy to break these so-called peace agreements because all the rebels, all the people they have out there, some of them don't even get the word that this shit needs to stop. Right. And so one massacre, one something that comes up breaks all these agreements at this high level because the lower level people are not necessarily on board. So you got to get your people in order to say, hey, listen, we're in a ceasefire and we can't have anybody messing up this fragile peace.
Peace and development cannot rely only on good intentions. They must be built on responsibility, clear commitments, measurable timelines, and consequences for non-compliance. This is the only way to restore credibility, not just among states, but with the people who are waiting for peace to become real. The signature of today's Declaration of Principles heralds renewed hope. It reflects the U.S. resolve to complement and support regional and international efforts. This initiative brings accountability and draws the hard lessons from past efforts that have failed to materialize. So the good news is there is hope for peace. The real news, peace must be earned, and it will require seriousness, transparency, and sincerity. We welcome the leadership of the United States of America, a country that has shown steadfast support, consistent principles, and resolve in multilateral forums, especially within the United Nations Security Council. Mr. Secretary, Senator Rubio, I would like to express our deep gratitude. Dr. Boulos, also, your extensive consultations across the region have brought nuance, depth, and humanity to this process. And your presence today underscores that diplomacy must listen, understand the lived experiences of those most affected, and seek durable solutions. The Democratic Republic of the Congo recognizes and values this engagement of the United States. We are also encouraged by US-backed initiatives that promote secure mineral value chains and inclusive economic growth. These efforts reaffirm that peace and prosperity are inseparable. Each step towards stability is a step towards dignity, jobs, and schools. This is the promise of responsible investment and a principled partnership with the DRC, a country not only emerging from conflict, but also at the core of finding solutions to global challenges. To our countrymen and women in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, especially in the East, we know you are watching this moment with concern, with hope, and yes, with doubt. And you are right to do so. You have every reason to expect more than promises. You are entitled to actions that measure up to the suffering you have endured. We draw strength from your resilience, from your commitment to justice, and from our shared, unwavering belief that our sovereignty and our territory are not negotiable. We are a nation that honors its responsibilities, and we understand that history, geography, and yes, maybe even fate has given us the neighbors we have. The borders we inherited, as confirmed by the African Union, are permanent and will never change. But beyond these lines lie histories, families, and communities that bind us together. This shared heritage calls for maturity, restraint, and the wisdom to recognize that peace is not weakness, it is strength. Once again, we stand at crossroads, with peace within reach, and we, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, are determined to move forward, building on the lessons from the past. We stand as a nation dedicated to achieving lasting peace. We welcome the support of a strong partner by our side. And I voice the solemn hope that all parties will seize this opportunity, just as we, the DRC, have chosen to. Thank you.
So she reinforced what I said before, that from her level, that high top level, they could say one thing, but the people have to believe her and be patient, that this thing is not going to work overnight. And it's hard for folks to with the pain and suffering of 30 years of death and destruction, automatically decide that, you know what, we're gonna give peace a chance, right? With all of this stuff, with all of this death and destruction and loved ones and family, you know, it's just somebody saying something from a table doesn't necessarily mean I can get rid of my anger. I want my get back, that kind of stuff. So these kind of talks are really fragile, but it'd be nice if America could broker a lasting peace between these nations, and somehow, without being imperialistic, actually begin to do business on a fair level for all of those minerals out there, because we need them and we need to have some control over them. And in return, we may have to have our security forces help these people out. Now, whether that's worth it or not, you guys have to think about it on your individual basis. But I think so. We've put ourselves in the middle of shit for lesser things. So let's hear what the brother has to say coming up next.
Thank you, Madam Minister. Mr. Minister.
Thank you. Good afternoon. On behalf of President Paul Kagame and the government of Rwanda, I want to start by thanking President Donald Trump for enabling a real change in the conversation on how to resolve the situation in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, leading to the signing of the Declaration of Principles today. I thank Secretary Marco Rubio and the United States government for hosting us, and I commend the positive role played by Senior Advisor Massad Boulos and his team and other officials in the significant progress achieved thus far. Today, we are talking about the real issues, the root causes that must be addressed to achieve a lasting peace in our region. Those include, first and foremost, security, as well as the return of refugees. In addition, and very importantly, we are discussing how to build new regional economic value chains that link our countries, including with American private sector investment. Our goal is a secure region, free of violent ethnic extremism, which is well governed. Working together, our region can be an engine of prosperity for all our peoples and indeed Africa as a whole. The Declaration of Principles opens the door to a definitive peace agreement, giving fresh impetus to ongoing efforts of the Africa-led process under the East African Community and Southern African Development Community, as well as the Doha track, facilitated by the State of Qatar, where we have seen important breakthroughs in recent days. Our common aim is to conclude a comprehensive peace agreement as soon as possible. But there are no shortcuts or quick fixes, and we have to do the hard work to get it done right, once and for all. Rwanda is committed, and we are ready to continue working together with all the partners in of this initiative. I thank you all.
Thank you. All right.
Let me stop it right there. You know, they said some things from the beginning. I just say that, okay, first of all, I commend all these guys because speak really good English, you know. I wouldn't be surprised that each one of the delegates or administrators here could probably speak several languages. But so now this is a precursor to what I think is what Trump did just recently with the president of the DRC. And I'm going to go ahead and put that video up, and we'll play through that pending deal between the United States and the DRC. And I'll start it from the beginning. So let's just go ahead and take a look at that and say, well, you know, this is a good thing. We're sitting down here in America worrying about, you know, migrants and all that kind of stuff, but the rest of the world is still moving. You know what I'm saying? Excuse me. Okay, so let's start this from the beginning.
Can Washington and Kinshasa really reach a fair deal on mining? The DRC is looking for a trade agreement, but critics say the end result will be exploitation, with private U.S. security companies contracted to shore up mineral extraction. Is President Trump making a modern-day scramble for Africa?
You know, so exploitation, that's the same old rhetoric to say that, you know, only good deeds that need to be done, we should do it for free, unless it's exploitation. The president of the DRC reached out to Trump and gave him and put a deal on the table. And that deal on the table she's going to talk about, and it sounds like a deal that Donald Trump said, well, maybe we should take a further look at it, as opposed to just leaving the place butt naked to the world, to the Chinese, which makes a lot of sense to me. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so they're gonna go over a little bit of what the Congo has to offer.
I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's newsmaker is Trump in the DRC. Well, countries rarely get more complicated than the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Incredibly rich in mineral resources, it has a history of severe exploitation by foreign powers, while mostly internal conflict has kept the DRC mired in poverty and at the mercy of rebel groups. So it's interesting to see President Felix Tshisekedi asking a foreign power to help provide internal security in exchange for mineral extraction. Well, U.S. President Trump sees it as a great opportunity to procure the minerals and rare earths he wants to build U.S. manufacturing, but is going head-to-head with China in one of the world's most insecure areas a wise idea? Here's a look.
All right. So the question, the question she asked is, what's the alternative? Just let China walk in there and exploit the Congo the way they've exploited, you know, other places in Africa already. You know, it's funny. They had this movie, this series out called I forgot it. Was my man, but anyhow, you got a computer whiz, and one of the premises of the movie was China taking over Africa and having it annexed as part of China because they had put so much money into the place. They wanted to actually get rid of that government and annex the country for themselves, and they wanted the rest of the world to agree with it at a security at the UN. So anyway, oh, here we go. We have no choice but to do what Trump is doing. And I'm glad he's doing it. And I think as American people, we should definitely think, you know what, if we can have an inside track on the minerals here, it's kind of what he's trying to do with Zelensky as well. The minerals there, you know, and in return for giving some kind of security, I think that might be worth it.
This is the moment a mountain collapsed at a mine in the Democratic Republic of Congo, revealing tons of copper. And the country has a lot more. It produces 71% of the world's cobalt and 34% of coltan. Yet the fight to control this vast fortune has also fueled the DRC's more than 30-year-long internal conflict. Since the M23 rebels renewed their offensive in December last year, at least 7,000 people have been killed and over 1 million displaced. The rebels have seized Goma, the capital of mineral-rich North Kivu province, and continued to advance. The Congolese army has failed to stop them, and peace efforts have brought no result. Now the government is turning to the United States for a deal involving the exchange of minerals for security. President Felix Tshisekedi wrote in a February letter to his counterpart Donald Trump that the two countries' partnership would provide the US with a strategic advantage by securing critical minerals. A Congolese senator and an African lobbying group offered the Secretary of State Marco Rubio that the US could train and equip Congolese forces, get access to military bases, and replace UN peacekeepers in return for protecting strategic resources. And Trump's Africa envoy, Massad Boulos, recently made his first official trip to DRC, meeting with Tshisekedi.
We seek a lasting peace that affirms the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the DRC and lays the foundations for a thriving regional economy. You heard about the minerals agreements. We have reviewed the DRC's proposal and I am pleased to announce that the President and I have agreed on a path forward for its development.
So there you have it, So you had the Marco Rubio going up there trying to broker peace between two countries. And now we're talking about if we could broker that, then within the DRC with their warring factions, how do we get those guys, those rebels, to lay down their arms so the country could thrive, and whether they like this president or not, I would imagine some other deals would have to come in place where they actually start to form a government that is more democratic. It might be part of what America might ask for the kind of security that they're looking for. But, just like Zelensky, when a guy gets power, they really don't want to give it up. Even if in an election. So Zelensky would rather see all of his people die as opposed to him just giving up his power, because he's still kind of asking for the same things that cannot be delivered. So, these guys forget about everybody else and they just think about themselves when they get on top. So I think that I'm not so sure about this president of the DRC. I'm sure his hands are not clean. I'm sure of it. All right. So it's going to be, this is a good step, because I think we as America should be in the midst of a lot of things in Africa, but we should be talking about business deals and not trying to push the alphabet mafia on these countries as a way of extorting them to get resources.
Reuters news agency also reports that Trump ally Eric Prince reached a deal to secure and tax Congo's resources. Prince is the founder of the private military contractor Blackwater. He sold the company in 2010 after some of his employees were charged with killing civilians during the Iraq War. Trump pardoned him in his first term, and now he's emerged as a player in the Congo agreement. The US push is aimed at countering China's advantage in access to critical minerals. Congo's vast cobalt wealth is vital in the production of electric vehicle batteries, military equipment, and the aerospace industry. And China currently controls around 75% of Congo's mining. But China's policy of non-interference doesn't provide Congo with much needed security. Details about the US deal are few and far between, but the two countries share a dark history. The US supported Congo's dictator Joseph Désiré Mobutu until his fall in 1997. During his reign, the West was accused of turning a blind eye to Mobutu's brutal rule in favor of resource flows from the country. Some fear the new deal will lead to further exploitation, and the Congolese will see little benefit. For now, both parties seem to have what each other needs, but it's unclear whether this will ultimately bring Congo peace, security, and wealth, or more trouble in the long run.
Well, joining me now to debate the merits, or lack thereof, of this deal are from Washington, non-resident fellow at the Center for Global Development and Liberia's former Public Works Minister, Jude Moore. Also from Washington, CEO of the Southern Africa Resource Watch, Claude Kabemba. And from London, chief campaigner of Save the Congo, Vava Tampa. Thanks all so much for being with me, Claude.
Well, before these guys get going, right, let's also keep an ear out to see whether some of these guys or any of them have Trump derangement syndrome, and they just don't like the deal because Trump is involved. If that's all they say, then you know what, we have to discount their position. But if we're talking specifically about this deal, if China already has 75% of inroads, and they don't, and like I said before, China doesn't give a shit about the people. They just like the deal, right? Because they don't, you know what I'm saying? So there's got to be something extra that the U.S. is going to want to give them, so that deal could be more lasting and be able to spread around the people. China just wants the resources, and they can give a shit about what happens to the DRC or the people there. And you know what? You can probably say the same thing about America, but this deal might be couched a lot differently, where they can't just forget about the people themselves, and that'll be a welcome change.
I'll start with you. Donald Trump really wants to see things done here as simply and as straightforward as possible. And in this case, the DRC is supposed to secure mining rights for the U.S. in exchange for security mostly via private contractors, but you believe this is far more complicated a landscape. So explain what you think the U.S. is really getting into here.
Yeah, before they get, hey, what's up, Curtis? Yeah, before they get started. You know what? Like I said in the beginning of this, if you ever see the replay, I'm no Africa expert, but I'm just saying it'd be nice for America to get involved as opposed to just letting China run roughshod over Africa. And the deal that the president is making on the heels of Rubio getting Rwanda and the DRC together, and internally with the president of the DRC reaching out to Trump saying, listen, we could make a deal with you for our minerals if you can get these goddamn rebels off my back so I can rebuild my country. Now, I didn't know until I saw this video that China has a lot of rights in there, but the Chinese don't give a shit about no Africans. So the China deal they made was just purely for money. And China says, listen, your problems internally is your problems. I don't care about it. But he wants a different deal with America, meaning training his troops, maybe even putting some boots on the ground. So we'll see. I'm not an expert at this stuff, but nobody talks about what we're doing in Africa. The only time they did, like I said before, was when the Biden administration and the Obama administration wanted to turn all of these guys into homosexuals.
Look, my sense, it's the DRC today is at a very difficult position, the government. You remember that President Tshisekedi was elected recently in power, and just after that, he's facing a rebellion. Signing the Congolese problem is quite complex. A deal for minerals for military support will not solve the Congolese problem. My sense is that if the US is going to play a role that is sustainable, it will have to more engage in bringing the different parties together to find a sustainable solution to Congolese problems. And we've seen that military solutions do not solve Congolese problem. And it will be a big mistake for the Trump administration to go in to follow that route. It is, I think if they do that, it will definitely shows the addiction that America has to dominate that could make President Trump to sign or consider signing such a deal with a country that is facing serious instability and serious government deficit.
Okay. Let me move on then to Jude. So Claude feels it won't solve the problem, and others fear it won't just not solve the problem, it will cause greater problems in the longer term. Is that the page you're on?
I think that's a fair assessment. Thanks again for having me. I think it's a very fair assessment. However, I would say, though, that on every opposition, the government is in a very weak situation. So even if you were to begin negotiations with the M23, you're doing so from a position of weakness. So I expect what the government hopes is ultimately there is no permanent solution that is not through the political process of bringing everyone together. But it wants to be on the front foot when it does that. So the goal, I'm not privy to what the government is discussing, but my understanding is that the government wants to be in a stronger position in terms of a military position when faced with the M23. But to Claude's point, there is no long-term solution for the Congolese people that doesn't go through a political process to secure it. And so, yeah, there are risks to that. But with the government push as it is, and as I started, the primary responsibility of a government, any government, is to protect its people. And currently in the Eastern DRC, the government isn't doing that. I see why they feel the need to do something this drastic, even in the short term. It hurts them.
Okay, let me ask Vava. I mean, if short term, long term, either way, do you think Felix Tshisekedi is the best leader to be driving this forward? Does he have the best interest of the people genuinely in mind? And how much is he actually eyeing getting more IMF assistance into the country through this kind of dealing?
Thank you, Andrea, for having me. I think my two colleagues, the other two guests, misunderstand the issue. What we are fighting for, what the situation in our hands, isn't about a political solutions. Tshisekedi could potentially actually secure peace if he goes for minimal for justice, not minimal for peace. So if it's the case that the Congolese government, Felix Tshisekedi's government, is pushing the US, giving the US a preferential deal in return for an end to the culture, to the near total culture of impunity, which is fueling insecurity, which leads into illicit trade and of natural resources and institutional failure. If Tshisekedi pushes for an end to impunity, then the current situation, the conflict we are facing, would come to an end. And Tshisekedi could be recorded in history as potentially the greatest political leader Congo has ever had. So Congo does not need a political solution. We've had hundreds of political solutions, 100 of peace deals, 100 of elections. We've similarly had a lot of UN peacekeepers. They have all failed. We've also had deals by the IMF, by the World Bank, as some sort of economical plan. They have all failed. They have failed for one single reason.
They got to get rid. You cannot deal with the IMF. The IMF have destroyed more third world countries than anybody else. I mean, once they own you, you can't make. They make decisions on what you can grow, what you can sell. I mean, it's just a bad deal. It's like dealing with the mob. You know, a world-generated mob of people who don't look like you, by the way, and who hold you in contempt. So, you know, those are the worst deals. And only the people who make money out of the IMF are the stupid leaders who make these deals, and the money never flows down to the people. So I like what this guy is saying. You got to try something new. And the other two guys just on some other bullshit, even though they might have a point. Those points have been made for 30 years and people are still dying.
Impunity. Impunity in Congo, Andrea, leads into insecurity. That insecurity leads into illicit trade and extraction of natural resources. And all of those three issues lead into an institutional failure. The institutions of the state can no longer function. So if Tshisekedi's plan is natural resources in return for justice, an end to impunity, then my God, he could become the greatest Congolese ever to ever live.
But Claude, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Vava, I hear Vava is quite concerned, but what Vava forgets is that the biggest impunity is internal. Vava will remember that the Congolese resources that we want to give to the US is captured by the political elite. It's not just beginning with President Tshisekedi. It has always been like this for the past 60 years. So the problem really, Vava, is not, my sense is not really that the US is going to clean up the Congolese governance. The Congolese governance should have been cleaned up by Congolese themselves, and it's very difficult because most of the political elite, the soldiers, the military, they're all involved in that impunity. So I don't know how you solve that. I think we are going in a cycle. We need Congolese to sit together and put in place institutions that can function, that can hold leaders to account, and that's a just system that can function, and sanctions. And we don't have that currently.
Andrea, if Claude wants, I'm willing to give him a list of 100 peace deals and sitting between the Congolese government and different militia gangs over the past 20 years. Political solutions do not work. Similarly, military solutions are temporary. What we need is an end to impunity. Now, Claude is right. There is a lot of internal impunity issues. But again, if Claude remembers that there was something called the UN Mapping Report back in 2010, 2012, which essentially mapped around 500 war crimes and crimes against humanity.
All right, so I'm not going to go through all of this stuff. You can see it. I'll put the links in the description. But the truth of the matter is, like, it's like this vicious cycle of bullshit, right? You know, you either want to fix stuff or you don't, right? And Obviously, the political solution hasn't worked in 30, maybe 60 years, like my man said. There's got to be something radical. Now, the only thing we could be concerned in as Americans is if we want these mineral rights. I mean, there's still a battle with the Chinese who somehow signed away getting 70% of that shit. So do they, does the government or the DRC, can they take some of those contracts and move them over to the United States? And if for just 30% of the other piece, is that enough for us to say we might put boots on the ground? We could change, we could certainly supply them with weapons and all that kind of stuff. But again, the real point is that those rebel forces don't give a shit what the president says if he can't fight and beat them, right? If he doesn't have somebody with a hammer to say, listen, you rest with us, but this new deal. And then the part is, who's this guy's out? Who has a piece of the pie that could make a difference? So they probably got their so-called quote unquote oligarchs in the DRC who are making themselves really rich at the expense of their own people, which is like how Africa works. I mean, from top to bottom, of course. That's where you got little pockets of people with with money, and great pockets of people with just abject poverty. Right, we can see that kind of stuff in America too, but we don't necessarily look at it, and certainly not to the same extent, right? The fattest people in America are the people who are the poorest for some reason or the other. It seems like we got the fattest poor people in the whole world. So at least people are eating here and they got water to drink. But so my problem is, I think this is a deal that I think America should move forward with. And I will let Marco Rubio and let all those people try to work it. But we can't just leave Africa butt naked to the world, to the Chinese. The Chinese has moved all over the place, because first of all, their racism is different than our racism. White racism here in America says, you know what? I don't want to deal with, you black asses at all. Chinese say, you know what? We don't want to deal with your black asses, but if we could exploit you, we will. So they took over Jamaica. Look what they're doing down in the Panama Canal. If it wasn't for Trump, we wouldn't even have thought about the fact that the Chinese were going to control the canal. Can you dig that? We're sitting here sleeping with the sleepy Joe Biden and LBGYN Barack Obama, and the Chinese are taking over a canal that we built, and nobody even heard about that we have an issue there until President Trump got in office. Can you imagine the Chinese being able to close down that pathway between the Atlantic and the Pacific because they run it, and the Panamanian government getting rich, breaking their promise to the United States? What the fuck is going on? Right? So we're sitting down here, and China is absolutely taking over the world underneath the cover because they're willing to exploit anybody. They don't care about those people. Right? So racism isn't stopping them from making whatever deal is best for China. So America should have have more inroads in Africa, as opposed to Trump at one point calling them shithole countries. All of those countries have something to offer if you know how to get in there and work right with some of these people. Yeah, we might have to do some nation building. We do that all the time. So I don't know, man. So that's what I said. This is my thoughts. I ain't no expert on Africa, but I know we can't just leave it butt naked to the Chinese. Especially with all those minerals and all that stuff there. It's just absolutely crazy. Anyway, man, so I'm just kind of rambling. I just thought I would look at one of these political reactions to talk about something we don't talk about in America enough, and that's Africa. The place with the richest minerals in the whole world. That's it. So anyway, Payne, marriage, politics, and sports. Over and out. Oh yeah. Before I said over and out. I got my sports show this evening at 7 o'clock. So be there. We're gonna talk about some sports, the playoffs. You know, of course, I'm gonna touch on the Shedeur Sanders thing, and I'm not gonna say the same old stuff because I'm not so sure I really care that this rich kid fell through the draft, but I do think there was collusion, and that collusion maybe is something worth talking about. Over and out.